Hello guys, my name is Alexander, and today I'll be presenting my subjective analysis of two franchises. The first franchise is McDonald's, and the second franchise is Chipotle. Now, please remember that this is my own subjective analysis, a subjective analysis which you may or may not take into consideration when making your own personal financial decisions. Now the first franchise I'll be analyzing is McDonald's. As you can see from Yahoo Finance, the company has beaten 3 of its first quarterly earnings for 2021. However, it did miss its 4th quarterly earning, and expectations the estimate for its earnings in the first quarter are low. In terms of the share price, the company's share price has not risen significantly. At the beginning of the pandemic, the company's share price was at 213, and the share price maximum was at 268. Now, I'd like to talk a bit about the company's financial report. Before I get into the financial report, I'd like to talk a bit about about the conflict and how it will affect McDonald's. Now, McDonald's does operate in Eastern Europe. It does have restaurants in Ukraine and in Russia. That being said, we shouldn't expect any revenue coming from these two regions. That being said, it should be noted that the company only gained 9% of its revenue last year from Ukraine and Russia. And therefore, it is fair for us to say that the company that the company's revenue will not suffer significantly due to this conflict. In any case, going back to the company's financial report, the first thing I'd like to note is the company's financial activity. The company's financial activity has not risen significantly. In 2019, it was at negative 5,300, and in 2022, it's only at negative 5,500. Now, this may indicate that the company is purchasing its own shares. However, it has not increased its purchase amount by a large amount, and therefore it's unlikely that the share price will rise significantly. The next thing to point out is the company's total assets. McDonald's total assets have risen by a significant amount. In 2019, it was at 33,000, and in 2022, it's at 53,000. Now, this massive rise in total assets is mainly due to long-term assets, specifically PPE. The company has purchased a significant amount of PPE, and this may indicate that the company is building new restaurants for its franchise, expanding its franchise and its influence in the market. However, a more likely reason for this increase is refurnishing. The company has been planning to redesign its restaurants worldwide since 2017, and I believe that this rise in long-term assets is due to this reason. The next thing to point out is the company's total liabilities. The company's total liabilities have risen by a large amount. In 2019, they were at 39,000, and in 2022, it's at 58,000. Now, once again, the main reason why total liabilities have increased is because of the long-term liabilities. In 2019, the company's long-term liabilities were at 35,000, and they rose to 54,000 in 2022. This massive rise in long-term liabilities indicates to me that the company has taken out significantly large loans which they seem to be having difficulties at paying back. This can be clearly seen from equity. Equity is a negative value. In 2019, it was at negative 6,000, and in 2022, it's at negative 4,000. Negative equity is very bad for us investors. The company negative equity indicates that the company has more liabilities than assets, and it's in this case, it indicates that McDonald's is having a hard time at paying back the significantly large loans they have taken out. These massive loans and negative equity also explains why McDonald's is having a difficult time in using its capital. This can ROCE, the return on capital employed, has decreased by 8% for McDonald's during the 5 years. Now, as you can see from the financial report, McDonald's is gradually decreasing the negative value. However, as investors, we want equity to be positive. We don't want to see a negative value in equity. And hopefully the company manages to do this as quickly as possible. And hopefully it somehow manages to deal with the massive loans that they have taken out. Now, I'd like to talk a bit about Chipotle. Now, as you can see from Yahoo Finance, Chipotle has beaten all four of its quarterly earnings. However, expectations, the estimate for its first quarter this year is not too high. Now, in terms of the share price, compared to McDonald's, Chipotle's share price has increased significantly. At the beginning of the pandemic, the company's share price was at 866, and it peaked at 1,903. Now, I'd like to talk a bit about the company's financial report. Before I talk about the report, again, I'd like to talk a bit about the conflict. Chipotle does not operate in Eastern Europe. It does not operate in Ukraine nor Russia. Therefore, it's unlikely that the company will be affected by the conflict raging in Ukraine. In terms of revenue, it should not be affected. Now, when we look at the company's financial report, the first thing I'd like to talk about is their financial activity. Unlike McDonald's, the company's financial activity has risen much more. In 2019, it was at 166,000, and in 2022, it's at negative 548,000. Now, this increase in financial activity may indicate that the company is increasingly is buying more and more of its own shares, and if that's the case, then we could expect the company's share price to rise in the future. However, the company could potentially be investing somewhere else. The next thing I'd like to talk about is their total assets. The company's total assets rose from 2,200,000 to 6,600,000 in 2022. Now, this increase was partially caused by current assets, but a bigger factor was the long-term assets, specifically PPE. The company has bought significantly more PPE, and this likely indicates that the company is planning to build more of their own restaurants. The company did announce not too long ago that it has built its 3,000th restaurant and that it's planning to build 215 new locations in the US, Canada, and Europe. This is a very good thing. We can see that the company is aggressively expanding its restaurants. It's expanding further into the markets it's already present in, and it's planning to expand into new markets. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the total liabilities. Just like McDonald's, the company has increased its total liabilities significantly. In 2019, it was at 800,000, and in 2022, it's at 4 million. Once again, this increase in total liabilities is partially due to a rise in current liabilities. However, a bigger factor is the long-term liabilities. As you can see, in 2019, long-term liabilities were at 374,000, and in 2022, they rose to 3,480,000. This massive increase in long-term liabilities indicates to me that the company, just like McDonald's, the company has taken out significantly large loans. However, unlike McDonald's, the company doesn't seem to have a problem at paying back these significantly large loans. This can be seen from equity, which rose from 1,400,000 to 2,200,000. which is very good compared to McDonald's, because, well, firstly, equity is not negative. Therefore, the company doesn't seem to have a problem with the massive loans they've taken out. And it doesn't have a problem at using its capital. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the expenses. Unfortunately, Chipotle seems to have significantly large expenses compared to McDonald's. General and administrative expenses decreased from 680,000 to 600,000, but this decrease isn't significantly large. On the other hand, sales expenses have increased significantly from 1,600,000 to 2,300,000. Now, this increase, this indicates to me that Chipotle is dependent on workers, and the expenses involved with them. And it looks like Chipotle knows this themselves. Chipotle it has entered a new market. They have entered a digital market. They have created a digital order pickup method. And most importantly, they are continuing to upgrade their loyalty program. Now, the loyalty program is good because it encourages customers to come back, but most importantly, the digital order pickup method makes it easier for customers to order, and most importantly, it reduces the labor force Chipotle needs in order to operate their restaurants. Now, what this means is that we could potentially see a decrease in the company's expenses. Even with the expenses, the company has managed to increase their income. In 2019, the income was at 170,000, and in 2022 the income rose to 650,000. And it's likely that this income will rise even more once the company successfully decreases their dependency on the labor force. Now, I'd like to rate the two companies. Okay. As you can see, I've placed McDonald's in the careful section. The reason why is because the company is having a problem with their loans. It has a negative equity, and it is having a difficult time at using its capital. This is again due to the loans. If the company manages to bring back its equity to a positive value, if the company manages to bring the loans under control, then the company could potentially move to the OK section. Chipotle, I've placed Chipotle in the careful section. The reason why the company is, personally, I think the company is better than McDonald's, purely because it doesn't have negative equity. However, the company is dependent on workers. I'd like to see Chipotle become less reliant on physical labor and become more automated in the future. And as I've said earlier, that company is taking those steps. And if the company successfully enters the digital world, if it successfully reduces their expenses, their dependency on workers, then I'll place Chipotle in the OK section. Just to make it clear, McDonald's and Chipotle are both in the careful section, but I think Chipotle does have a better financial result than McDonald's. In any case, this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like and subscribe. And in the future, I plan to cover in the next video, I plan to cover Apple and one of its competitors. Thank you and goodbye.